Micah, how are we doing today?
Oh man, I'm doing awesome. It's spring.
Good. Good. It is spring, and spring is a great time to record a little conversation. Uh, we came off a Q2 meeting where we talked about we wanted to capture and document more of what we're doing here at Aleph Ventures with our partners, some of how we think, some of what we're up to, and that's what we're doing here. So excited to be doing that with you.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. It's a great idea to tell the stories of what's happening kind of in Aleph Ventures, but also just helping the industry grow. Whether you ever become a partner or not, we want to be able to talk about what's working, talk about the mentality it takes to grow a company that's stable, create great cultures. And so telling those stories is a big part of that. Obviously, we like to get on other podcasts and talk with other people, but to be able to have the time to talk about our own stories together is also a lot of fun. So bringing on people that are in the industry that are not Aleph partners, but are really great champions for what it looks like to have a healthy business that's growing is going to be a big focus. So I love that you're leading that charge, Haakon.
Yeah. Every time something breaks at my house, some weird part on a dishwasher or some weird thing, and there's just some obscure guy who just happened to record himself fixing the exact thing that I was dealing with, and then he posted it, and the video has like 4 views, but it's like the perfect thing that I needed at that moment in time. I always like thank those people. So maybe we could do a little bit of that. I'm sure there's some business owners and people out there
I think for sure
we do it.
We can for sure pull off the 4 views, hopefully.
Okay, good. Let me bring us into the conversation I wanted to have with you today. So at Aleph, we have core values. So we have 4 core values as a group that are under an umbrella of relationship first. So we are relationship first, speaking to, collaborating, and helping people. That's super important to us. And then how we like to flesh that out in our core values is engaged, accountable, exceptional, and grateful. And the way that we look at those, as you know, we kind of break the year into 4 quarters. And in Q1, we focus on being engaged. What does that mean to be engaged in your role, in what you're doing day to day? And in quarter 2, we focus on accountable, being accountable in your role. So that's what I wanted to focus on. We're well into Q2. This is the quarter of accountability, and I think that's something that we do pretty well, but it's something that we focus on, and it's an effective focus, I think, for us. So that's what I wanted to talk about, and in particular in your world. So maybe just to set the stage a bit, give us an idea of what are you specifically focused on here at Aleph? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? Kind of what is your world to set the stage for how accountability is going to apply for you?
Love it, Haakon. Yeah, well, I'm one of the founders of Aleph, one of 5 individuals, and we started this thing back in 2019. And since then, there's been so much fun growth, and there's more people that are a part of this thing nationally as well as here locally within the walls of our office, which is really fun. I have typically worn the sales and marketing hat. So I've overseen that division in Aleph for a while now. Really, my day job per se would be VP of sales and marketing for Paris Painting, Paris Roofing, and other entities we've had in the holdings. And then I've leaned in a lot on all the sales playbooks, the systems, that we've built for sales nationally as well. So as partners enter into a joint venture with us, a lot of that DNA of sales culture has been something I've put a lot of work into. So sales, is there an accountability in sales? Yes. So the ability to bring in the revenue on time so production can do what they need to do with it to bring the company where it needs to go at scale is pretty key, that we have some accountability towards that. So that gives you a little context of why it's important to me and I've definitely learned a lot of lessons along the way. I'm sure we'll get into that together, but yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Give me a quick summary. So how many people report to you directly? And then what KPIs are you accountable for in your day-to-day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in Paris Painting, we have 11 sales individuals right now. We have 4 now in the roofing division. And then we have some crossover where painting sales reps will also sell roofs. So Paris Roofing, Paris Painting, both of those divisions. And then I lean in as a coach and a support nationally. We have, I think right now, almost 40 individuals selling nationally, which is pretty great. And leaning in on the culture of those areas. But a lot of my day-to-day like grind of my employee hat is leading a team in the painting and the roofing side here in town. The metrics that I'm accountable to, there's a metric that Aleph uses. It's one of our core stability metrics. It's 35% cost on margin. We've developed that as really a metric that we track. It's a scorecard metric we've designed over the last few years that really helps frame in what accountability to a good net profit in a company should be, that you should have your sales and marketing be at or below that 35% cost on margin. And the percentage gets a little weird because percentages are weird, right? Percent of what, right? So it's really what is the budget for a salesperson's role? What is the budget for marketing? And that's all costs, every cost around marketing, every cost around sales. What is that cost divided by the planned margin off the planned revenue in a business plan? And so yours might be 40% or it might be 20%, right? You don't know what it is verbatim. We have budgets that we plan on where we try to get them in a certain place. We know what we want for each line. But at the end of the day, it's those costs, sales and marketing, on the revenue, the margin that comes in. So ultimately, that is the metric that I am accountable to within the divisions of Paris Painting and Paris Roofing. And I'm doing weekly, monthly trends on that number. And when you unpack that number, you go a lot deeper into revenue sold, average job size, success ratio. So how many jobs do you sell on bids that you do? Lead quality, what's our slippage? So leads that get booked versus leads that actually hit calendars and they get estimates or they get inspections in the roofing side. All of those metrics are a factor into what the cost margin is in the business as a whole. And trends. So where do we need to be by when? What does that mean in terms of end of year? What are we on trend to do? What are we not on trend to do? And then what is the margin percentage of the sales people's jobs that they've sold, right? So if somebody's below their margin target on the year, what are we going to do about that? If the business as a whole is under its margin target, what is the reason why and what are we going to do there? So those are some of the metrics and I could probably do 6 hours on each of those. I'll spare you from that, but those are the metrics that are really important.
No, so okay, so that's a helpful tee up. So there's a team, right? So there's humans that you are managing. There's specific metrics that you're accountable to. So that's good. That's some of the like ingredients, and which I want to set the stage of that, and we'll get further into that. But maybe if we take a step back, like when we say accountable, and like how would you define accountability? What do we mean? What do we mean by accountability, being accountable? How would you answer that?
Yeah. So at the beginning of every year, when we start, we have plans that we sign off on and we come together and get alignment on. So in my role, it's the entire sales plan that's going to lead to the whole business plan on revenue. So that plan gets settled up. And then each individual has a portion that they're going to bring in specifically in the sales side of that sales plan. And so as we get into the end of year, we usually do annual reviews. We get clear with each other on how things are going. What are we going to do? And then we move into a compensation planning for the future year. We do new sales contracts every year. And I would say across whether you're 1099 or W-2 in our company, there's kind of a re-up of what is next year's plan and what is the comp that is associated with that. So at the point that we set those plans for the business and individuals, there are metrics put in place, very clear targets for the annual sense. And those become really the benchmark of what accountability looks like in terms of those numbers. You're basically signing off on an agreement to say, yep, I will be accountable to these numbers between now and the end of the next year. And that kind of foundational base is how I define accountability. Are you on plan to the plan that you set off to do and you committed to?
Great. And I think it's helpful to share the plans that people commit to. So there's an element of maybe just talk a little bit about some of the culture of accountability and how we try to foster that, particularly around that the plans are plans that people have committed to, as opposed to plans that we just handed them and are holding them accountable to.
No,
walk through that process a little bit.
Yeah. So, you can expect in a corporate culture, for instance, to hopefully get that cost of living raise once in a while. And then your accountability metrics might be a little vague. You're not really sure. It's like, is it just show up and do work? What defines my ability to make more income? How do I go from A to B in my role? And I think that's probably some of what you're alluding to. Is that what it's like? We just hand over, here's your plan. We have an extensive process where an individual breaks down what is real, what is my past performance, what do I believe in, and they build their own compensation plan off of a model that we have, right? So everyone uses the same model, but everyone's compensated differently based on their skill, their ability, where they've started, where they're going, and then how motivated they've been in the past. What does that give them in terms of an end result? It can be different for each person. And the model can still work. So you could sell $1 million or you could sell $2 million and the model still works, but you get paid differently or are incentivated. You are incentivated differently based on that. And so, but each person will build that plan and they come and present it to me in a meeting and we walk through it and I validate, yep, that makes sense. This maybe feels a little too exciting because I want those plans to be like, you're 100% going to hit this plan, right? That's what I want those plans to be around their compensation, because I really want our people to make the money they want to make at base. And then we look at an inspirational after that of what could happen if you work on your success ratio, if you work on your driving more bid flow for yourself, right? Self-gen bids or something like that. So, but they're really bought into the process. They do the work to build their first comp plan. And then it usually just gets refined and I make sure it aligns with the company at large. And if it does, we sign off and move forward.
Nice. Mm-hmm. And maybe to camp out there just a little bit more of that's like some of the process, but I think even some of the heart behind that too of, I think if you ask a lot of business owners, hey, could my salespeople be more accountable? They'd probably say yes. But how do you move forward with a culture of accountability in a way that doesn't crush people? So maybe a question would be, how do you balance that culture of accountability and holding people accountable to a plan, but also supporting them in hitting their plan? I think that's an important piece that people sometimes miss.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you lock in these plans, you launch into it, and then reality hits, right? Is every spreadsheet, is every sales trend that you build at the beginning of the year, is it 100% hit? Are you always on that trend, right? Of course, everything in life just goes a nice smooth trend upward, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Not all the ones I've built over the years, but
wrong. So, life is more like this, right? And
Right.
and that can happen. There's a sales grind for sure, where you are going to have some down weeks and some up weeks, but you're really watching what is that blended middle. Is the blended middle trend coming up, right? Are you getting on pace to where you need to be? But along that journey, there's different people at different stages. There's brand new people who are learning the trade, they're learning the role. And so onboarding matters a lot. How we do training, how we come alongside and get them ready to go, to get on top of their plan. A big piece of what I do with first time sales reps is I am a lot more, I'm not that excited about what their early results look like. And I build a plan that shows the learning grind. And I've seen it for years. So I know not to go too aggressive right out the bat, and kind of plan their learning growth into their stability. And that helps them to have the space and time to really get the learning. And then there comes a point where it starts to be underperformance versus actual just learning zone. And that's where coaching comes into play. And so a big coaching emphasis is that's what I did that this morning, and I'm going to do that right after this, right? I'm going to go out in the field and I'm going to work with one of our reps. I'm going to watch how they do their process. We have a model that we use for that. And I'm going to evaluate and kind of go side by side with them and just see what are they experiencing. I'm going to be there with them, with a homeowner, right? Help them on the bid, help them with the numbers, and really give them some feedback that they can actively work on to get them to the next level. Because there's literally nothing that I've run into in this business at this point, after 5-6 years, that I can't solve. I almost know every issue to a result being missed. It's just a matter of creating the clarity for that individual and what is the unique thing for that person. And then how do they get the feedback they can self-regulate on to actually change that metric. And so that's how I would say I'm accountable to them, right? I'm accountable as a coach. I'm accountable as a leader to come alongside and help them see what they're not seeing. And I've developed a culture, it's never fun when you feel like I'm only out because you are doing bad, right? That is never my intent. I think sometimes that there's a conversation needed, right? When somebody is off track, I'm not coming out to just watch your back, and see what's going on. I'm out to actually help you see something you might not see, and encourage you to get to the next level. And so I've had conversations out in the field where it's like, especially the reps that have been doing it for years, if they have a bad couple of weeks and I'm like, do you want me out there? Would you like to get together? Sometimes it's like, oh geez, I need coaching, I need to have a one-on-one. I need to have some connect. I want that to be a positive experience where there's kindness, there's development, there's care. I really care about the individuals on my team, and sort of come out and help them get over something that they're stuck on is a huge win for me. And I think as they play out the feedback, play out that the coaching that they do get, it's changed a lot of numbers and helps them get back on pace. And so that's kind of the rhythm of holding accountability. It's your role, it's your responsibility, it's your commitment. I'm not going to hold back from that, but I am going to come and support it quite a bit.
And I think that that's such an important piece of the coaching element. It's like coaching and accountability maybe counterintuitively go hand in hand. If you push really hard on holding people to something that you have very little skin in the game on, normally people don't respond super positively to that. That's kind of a taskmaster as opposed to a coach, right?
Right.
A coach is holding people to something that they have skin in the game into. They've sacrificed along with you. And I think that's a very, very important point. And maybe just to camp out on the how-to or how you think about structuring that. So you have 11 salespeople. I think people that might listen to this, maybe they have 3, maybe they have more than 11, maybe they have 1, or they're about to hire their first. How do you think about scheduling your time, right? Whether somebody is in the pure role of a sales manager, or part of what they do as an owner is they play sales manager for a portion of their time. How would you think about the coaching, like setting that up? Like, how many times are you going to go out in the field with somebody in their first month? And then maybe, how do you think about how often you're doing that through a quarter? I'd
Yeah.
love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So when somebody first starts, it's high investment mode. And if you have some people on the team already, they can lean in on that effort as well. They can go shadow and go out with your team where you don't have to be present. But if it's just you, it really is a lot of side-by-side work for sure, at least a half of your week for 2 to 3 weeks, right? Where you are you can have them come along and watch you do your normal tasks. So if you have bids, have them come watch your bids. What I've often done is I will schedule, I don't know, 6 to 8 estimates on their calendar, and I will come be the sales rep. And I just go from one to the next, and we do training while I am the salesperson on that, even though it's their bid, right? So that's gone really well. But you do a higher investment of time in those first 30 days to get them to where they're comfortable enough to know the basic skill sets, and it's high volume. And then at that point, you're moving into less invested time. I would say awesome if the next 90 days of a new rep, they can get seen every week for 1 or 2 moments. That is really valuable, right? So if you have somebody who's like, I kind of know what I'm doing now, I can estimate, I can carry on great conversations with clients. I know most of the product and issues that are happening on a house. They're moving, they're doing their own bids, they're out by themselves, right? You've gotten through a lot of their initial questions. And then so you're scheduling probably 1 to 2 coaching events with them each week for a few weeks. And then you can move to somebody who's stabilizing, their numbers are looking really good. They're achieving the sales volume to plan. And it's really having one very impactful coaching event every 30 days or so, where you're making an impact on the core issue that might be weak. It might have been strong, but then it got weaker over time. I mean, it's easy for any of us to get in a bad habit or forget something that was really effective when we first learned. Anybody who is a high performance player anywhere, I think, is constantly getting coaching, right? You're constantly investing in yourself. You're constantly evaluating, where am I at? What am I doing? So the best performers welcome that. But you're not always going to be, you need an outside voice to get dialed in, because it's easy to get stuck in a pattern of forgetfulness in maybe one area that you kind of lost, right? And so over time, one really impactful event continues to keep somebody in a place where they're performing at a high level. But it also is just a great relational way to get in the field, understand how people are doing, what's going on in life. I've often paired that with a lunch and a connect. That way, let's go do a bid or 2 together. Let's get lunch. Let's hang out and spend some time together. Is this job, is this trend, is all of this aligning with what you want to do in your life, right? I think one thing we often forget is if we're not focused on what individuals want and where they're going, a lot of times it's easy maybe for me to get focused on what am I trying to achieve with these salespeople and what does that mean for me? It's more impactful to take a moment to think about them and what do they need and how is what I'm doing helping them achieve, which ultimately it's better to give than receive. Am I right?
That's right.
And so if you give, there is all of the things that if you are focused on your own world, they come in time, right? Because people are more motivated if you feel like you have their back and if you feel like you care about what their dreams and visions are. It's a much more fun place to work and put your time and energy. You feel more commitment to the organization, right? So that can't be missed as why you would do this, right? It's not for me. It's not for me to come out and get my needs met. It's for me to come help you get your needs met.
I love it. All right, let's think about the scenario that nobody likes, but this is part of accountability. A big part of somebody's not performing, and their metrics are showing that, maybe some of their behavior is showing that, and that's the role that you're playing. You're holding accountability. So let's say you're going into a meeting where you know that you have to hold accountability. How do you think about that? What kind of tactics What have you learned? Give me maybe examples that have gone well, gone poorly. Just bring us into the dreaded accountability conversation that somebody might have to have.
First step is you slam the door and you just scream. Incorrect.
Yeah.
No, these are really important conversations. They're crucial moments for people. If you have really clear directives and goals and plans, and that's visible to an individual, you have weekly connects where you're talking about how are we doing? Are we on track? Are we off track? It's known. It's not a mystery. People are going to say, I'm struggling, right? I'm not achieving this. And they might say that it's somebody else's fault, or they might say it's my fault, and they might just be pummeled by it, right? And if you don't have those conversations early and often, that's how people will leave organizations, right? They just transition out because they just can't handle it, or they blame and they quit, or you get to a place where you just go, this doesn't work, and you have to fire or make a transition. And I really don't like that path. I like early and often communication. Actually, Gary Vee talks a lot about this, kind candor, which is a great terminology, I think, that I've really enjoyed. It resonates with things I've done, but he put the word to it. You're not pulling back in any way from the truth, right? And the truth is as I see it. The truth is as I see it, and what I believe we signed up for together, right? That's important if you're about ready to have a realignment moment and try and work to come back from a deficit. But it's important to know I and this sales rep came together with a plan at the beginning of the year, and it's not on track, right? I think that being really clear, you can go back to that and say, I think we can both agree we're not there, right? We're not on track to that plan. There's a certain time duration in which that plan has an opportunity to get caught up, and there's a time where you are looking at this is off track for real, right?
Right.
So sometimes it might need just a little time, but you're still having those conversations. But when let's just play out, you get to a place where there's not a lot of time and something really needs to change. The ability to come in with always telling the truth, always being open of, here's where I think we're off, but being kind to say, I want to help. I want to help you get to the next step. Do you want that? Are you committed to this? Do you want to go that way? That combination is the right way to have those conversations. And they're typically layered conversations. It's like there's the warning conversation of this is kind of an area that looks like it's trending in a bad direction. Let's set these priorities for the next few weeks. Then you come back to it and it looks like we're not changing it. And that usually is an individual didn't activate on the priorities, right? They didn't take their part of the plan to go make a change. And that's at the point where, your candor goes up a little bit more to say, hey, we talked about these things 3 weeks ago, and it was really clear you were going to go after that. Well, what happened? Right. So I find questions are really good. Just what are you thinking? What are you thinking through? How are you processing this? Was there something in life that prohibited this? Talk me through that. Right. Because for me, if somebody really wants to achieve this plan, they'll take all the advice or the recommendations and act on them. If they don't, it's either something blew up in their personal life and we just need to totally restructure how we're doing this, or they're not committed. And there's reasons for that, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I've had conversations where maybe the commitment, in full vulnerability, there's been times where I feel like me and them had some bad blood, right? They perceived me as maybe not being for them. And that could have been because I was busy and I didn't give them as much relational touch points. I didn't have as much communication in a certain time frame for them, combined with life chaos or, things like that. Or even maybe they had a couple jobs that went south and they wondered how our production team was doing. Those moments where they lose commitment, it's not always, sometimes I know I have this goal, but I don't know that I want to go fight for it because I don't know if I trust the product on the back end. Years ago, there was a few moments like that. We run into like zero of that now. But
Sure.
it is part of a growing company, right? And many people that might listen to this would have a company that's like, oh, the product, we're working on it, right?
Sure.
And so the salespeople really need to believe in the product. And so that might be the reason. But if you start with questions, kind of back to what's the approach there, to understand how they're processing, is a great way to just understand what's going on in their mind. What are they thinking is the issue? And then from there, you can start, laying out, well, are you committed to the path forward? If so, you put together really clear plans to get there. And if that doesn't work, then the next stage is, this is where this is heading, right? This doesn't work anymore for you or for me. And you make a transition out potentially. I have found in all of the transitions I've made, that process has been really clear and not a surprise. And I think that's important. But the ability to have early and often communication on what you guys have agreed together, right? And not let it's easy for any of us to push back in a tough time and say, well, this wasn't, this isn't, whatever it might be. When we're in an emotional state, that can be really hard. I've done it myself, right? I've blamed others for my own lack of commitment. I've done that. I think the ability as a leader to go, I've done that. I'm sure it's okay for other people to do that, but let's get to truth together. Let's use each other in the relationship we have to get back to truth and realigned, through good communication and that kind candor, which I really like.
Yeah. And I think part of that is those conversations don't happen in a vacuum. Those eventually happen in the context of, a relationship. So, and the manager, has to take responsibility. If you didn't set a clear plan from the beginning, if you didn't set clear rhythms of communications, if you didn't lay a foundation
right
that lended itself to clear accountability, I think you got to own that. And maybe you have to take inventory of like, am I holding them accountable to something that I made clear for them or not?
Right.
I think the way that you're talking, like you've developed really good ongoing behaviors that create a context where you can have that accountable conversation. But I think that's something that people need to be thinking about too. It's kind of a check on what the work that you've done leading up to it.
I want to say something on that. I think especially if you don't have a system in place for this, it's really challenging. I think leaders, if you're a good leader and you have some emotional intelligence and you care about your people, sometimes you live in this self-doubt of, I don't know if I made it clear enough. So you don't jump into the accountability as strongly. And sometimes if you haven't made it clear enough and you do go into it really strongly, there's a mismatch there too, right? It can really be an aggravating situation for somebody. So I think just an encouragement to anybody is there's always a time where you can reset expectations. And if you feel like you didn't do something well in terms of expectations and it's not working for the business or your leadership style or your culture, you can always say, hey, I wish I would have done better at this as an owner, right? But here we are, and I'm going to reset this expectation because I think it's healthier for me and it's healthier for you. And this is the expectation I have. You can decide that you don't want to do this, right? That's okay. But here's the expectation I have, and I want to realign on that. I want it to be clear because it's better for you and it's better for me. That is the process. Instead of just ignoring it, right? Or just kind of brazenly saying, you're not meeting my expectations and firing. There's a lot of that out there, right? I think you can absolutely reset an expectation if you think through what could have gone better and then have a really clear conversation and realign. That can go really well.
Love it. One more question on the topic would be, I think it's an important thing whenever you have managerial relationships that there's something to, you never want to hold somebody to a standard that you don't hold yourself to. And another way to maybe say that is it's hard to export something that you don't have yourself. So I think if there's a manager or a leader who they're not really living a life of accountability, they're not really accountable to much, then to hold somebody else accountable becomes really hard. You kind of got to model that a bit. I know you, we're friends. I know that you have a life where you have rhythms of accountability, but I don't know, just maybe bring like the personal side of that, of like, what are things that you have in your life that help you be an accountable person, that maybe help you like model that to your sales team, as you go throughout your responsibilities?
Yeah. I think, I'm thinking about my to-do list that my wife has given me that I'm not accountable to right now. So I have to have
a list. A list exists.
Looks like I need to have a realigning conversation there,
Yeah.
and that's for her with me before she, lets me go. But no, I think, I have a family. I have kids that need me for sure, right? I have almost 5 kids coming. They need me to show up as a dad. They need me to make an income and take care of them. They need me to be home and really invest the time and energy in them as well. And one of the things that I did back in 2015 is my natural personality is a 7 on the Enneagram. And typically you can be like real, like fun times all the time. Fun. I hate pain, right? I don't like pain. I want to ignore that it exists. And with that comes some flakiness. It comes some, just floatiness. You avoid the hard things at times. And I don't want to put anyone in a box of Enneagram numbers, right? But that's definitely more me, right? I am that. And I adapted and have adapted a lot since 2015 to create disciplines that have been way, way, way more life-giving and joyful to me than ignoring those. And it's things like daily task management. It's priority management of my calendar. It's looking out for 2 months ahead and seeing what's coming and planning for what is the most impactful thing for my family and for my work. It's understanding when I need to be present with my children and when work needs to shut off in that moment. It's also when does work need to turn on in a specific moment, and it might be at the detriment of my evening watching Netflix or something like that, right? So those are rhythms I designed through reading a book called Do More Better by Tim Challies, and it helped me really get into way more of a grab the bull by the horns versus getting trampled by the bull type of moment. And it helped me to see what is priority. What am I supposed to get my activity and time around because of what I'm accountable to, right? So I'm accountable to the sales plan for our companies. I'm accountable to our partners and how they are developed in their sales divisions or their people are developed. I'm accountable to my salespeople on how they develop and continue to stay on plan and be able to, part of that is I'm accountable to help show them if it's off track, right? If they're not seeing it themselves. I'm accountable to my wife and our relationship and that we're healthy and strong. All of those things are time investments. And every week when I look at kind of what's ahead of me, I make decisions around where I need to put my time and energy based on those priorities. So that's key. But I would recommend that book for anyone who's kind of in chaos and needs to bring it into order. Your ability to be prioritized around the thing that matters most to the goals that you have are really key. And then do you have goals? Do you have objectives that are important to you? That's really important. My pastor at church would talk about cornerstone habits. So there are cornerstone habits like fasting or prayer or fitness. Running is something that I've started doing that I never thought I would do. I used to think that was never going to be me. I started doing it because it was something I hated or I thought I hated. And it would be a good cornerstone habit to teach me how to do things that suck, right? That aren't fun. Yeah. And so when I'm 10 miles in on a run and I want to quit, but I have to run 13, that muscle that says, keep going and finish has been developed really strong over the last 2 years. And that's really helped me in all areas of life as well. And it's one of my greatest encouragements to my team as well as, real actual achieving or realizing your dreams comes through these mundane, everyday focused habits that get you to the end result. It's not usually like, wow, I made it. It's usually
I
these
know.
consistent showing up moments
Totally.
where you're like, man, I got a lot of year left. It's only April, right? That's when we're doing this talk. And I've got a lot of year left before I'm done. It's going to be just steady, focused work. And so you got to pull the lows up and bring down the highs and just stay really focused. And things in your life that you can do that help you flex that muscle are really valuable. I also have rhythms. So all of my team does a one-on-one. We do a one-on-one. We have a process where we fill out kind of a journal of the previous week. What did I say I was going to do? What did I actually do? And then how do I feel about what happened? So what were the drivers? What were the things that kept me back? How do I feel about that? And that really helps put you in a frame of mind where you self-evaluate. Well, I have that as well. So I do that within the organization. I do one myself, and then all my team does one. So I have to do the same thing. And I go out and coach, but I'm also coached. I went through coaching with Alex Kaloff, our COO, 2 years ago. We did situational leadership coaching where he helped me as I helped others and really helped me to be a better leader. So I'm coached as well. And I think that also helps to really put yourself in a place where the things you're asking people to do or you're doing with people, do that yourself. It is really important. And I think people see that.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. I think we crave that, right?
Yeah.
Leaders that really, what they're asking of us, they are doing themselves. I think that's where you garner a lot of respect for sure. So, man, that's great. Good topic, important topic, super important topic. As you mentioned, we're in Q2. There's a lot of year left, and accountability is something that we'll be leaning into, through the finish line. So appreciate the time, brother. If you listen to this, if you're curious about learning more about Aleph, you can find us on the social medias. You can go to our website. If you're interested in learning more about what we do with partnerships and how we partner with other companies, we would love to just have a conversation if you're curious. Also, too, if you just want to reach out to us and talk about more, talk shop on things like accountability and sales tactics, we love those conversations as well. So feel free to reach out. Again, my name is Haakon, Director of Development here. This is Micah, and we appreciate you taking the time. Thanks, Micah.
Love it, Haakon. Thanks.
Cool. I did not